and thank you for having me. We are currently in about 15 different markets throughout the US. Started strongly with Canada and Mexico, given its proximity to our market. And then we developed the Latin American market, which had some successes. But given here the focus of Asia, we have exports to Australia, work with David Mack, who's here with us tonight on Hong Kong. And we also have presence in Singapore currently. And one of your earlier speakers talked about trade winds. And I happen to have participated, and I'm here currently in Thailand, in Bangkok, for that conference, which I cannot recommend enough. I think it's a great start for any one company to participate in those conferences. But we can talk further about that a little bit later. So we do have about 15 different markets. They're fragmented to some extent, and we've been successful in doing it because we have a local presence in each one of those markets with individual distributors that work together with Hylands for the groundwork of the distribution of the products.
Okay, so obviously we're talking about some of the ways that you started to find. I mean, when you first decided you were coming in, how did you vet, or how did you deal with, finding the right partner?
Yes. So as I mentioned a second ago, currently I'm at TradeWinds in Bangkok, and have used them in the past in other markets. And it is a great start to find a list of distributors. They don't necessarily vet them for you thoroughly. They provide you with a preliminary list of companies that could be interested in working with you, which is a fantastic start. I mean, I could claim, if you will, that I have presence throughout the world, because if there's a US embassy, there's a commercial service, and if there's a commercial service, it can do the research for you to the extent that they will provide you with, a dozen or half a dozen companies as a starting point without you having to go out there day one. Once they provide you with those lists, usually is the top distributors in the country, number one, number two, number three, then it is up to you to really meet with them and find out if they are what you're looking for. And that merits a trip to that market, interviewing each one of them, and finding out exactly what their interest is, and ensuring that there's a good match. And it is key to ensure that what you have is what they do. What I'm trying to say here is that a lot of in-country distributors always want to have American products in their portfolio. And Hylands, it is a small pharmaceutical company when you're thinking of the big multinationals, but it is a household brand in the US. We have national distribution in the US, over 55, almost 60,000 doors. So any one smaller market is always interested in carrying Hylands. So in the case of Hong Kong, I interviewed 6 distributors, and all 6 said, yes, we want to work with you, Ben. But I did not necessarily want to work with all of them. So flew out there, met with them. And once I met with David and his team, we really had great chemistry. And they were not the biggest one at the time. They've certainly since then grown quite a bit. But it is key, or it is key in our view, not to work with the number one distributor, because the number one already has 100 brands ahead of you. I mean, 100, I'm exaggerating, but at least 50, 55 brands. They have, GSK, they have other leading pharmaceuticals. And then you're no longer an important brand to them. They have you, but they assign you to a junior brand manager, and you don't get a lot of traction. In the case of finding a number 2 or number 3 distributor, you are an important brand to them because you're a vital American company, and they really go out of their way to ensure that they're growing, that they're working with you. So in this case with Hong Kong, we had the success of finding Tycoon. And it is a young, aggressive, and hungry company. And to me, that was a key factor, that we were a priority to them, and they were hungry for growth. They were hungry for bringing a good American brands. So it worked out well, and it was a good story. Success story, I should say.
And now you talked about, in your particular category, the first entree into kind of through Hong Kong for registration was a challenge. Obviously, you can't get more delicate than medicine and babies, especially when it comes to mainland China. But can you talk about that incremental first selling into Hong Kong than what you found around people bringing it into mainland.
Yes, registration is always an issue, particularly with medicine. Working with the different ministries of health, they require a ton of information. Here again, having found the right partner with a regulatory team facilitated the work for me. That is to say, I was never intended to do the registration myself because I don't have the knowledge. I'm not the expert. In this case, I didn't speak the language. So having the key partner that has regulatory experience is important. And they walk you through the process. They will ask you for all the information that the Ministry of Health needed. And in the case of Hong Kong, because our products are natural in content, their regulatory team had the ability to register them as a food product. Now, that means that out of, the 15 SKUs that I presented to David and team, only 4, I think, or 5 made the cut that were able to register as food. The registration as a medicine was too complex, and it was going to be basically impossible to do that. And we did market those in country, and then we explore cross-border trade with China from Hong Kong.
And actually, you started doing cross-border trade actually without you actually doing anything. What was happening? What'd you find out?
Well, Chinese customers over time have preferred the use of American products. To some extent, they even doubt their own quality and quality control. Many of you may remember the scare that was in China regarding milk for babies, powder milk or formula, baby formula. So there's a lot of fear for Chinese-made products, particularly for babies. And David and team saw that opportunity. So they began to ask me if e-commerce was something they could explore. And I said, absolutely. And they had the know-how in the biggest, the commercial e-commerce channels that work in China, which is Tmall and JD at the time. They listed the product, created the flagship stores, and began to market the product to consumers out there, particularly to moms. We did have an issue, though, that I can't remember what the exact law was, but overnight, the Chinese government said, starting tomorrow, you may no longer sell cough and cold products to kids. So the business came to a halt. That's to say that working with China oftentimes is complex. There are many surprises, and many times there's nothing you can do. So that was sad news to hear from David and his team, and we did not, succeed going forward with any more products in the Chinese marketplace. However, the e-commerce play works well. Chinese consumers are looking for American products. Oh, and by the way, I should have mentioned this earlier. Another sign that we had that American consumers wanted products, Hylands products. Before COVID and before the border shut down, and I visited the region with David, you would see hundreds of Chinese citizens coming across the Chinese border into Hong Kong. They would shop in Hong Kong stores, and it's really amazing how they do it. They would come in with 2 or 3 very large suitcases. They're empty. They would go into the store. They would grab 50 units of whatever they can get their hands on. I mean, they have a list of what they need to buy. They go outside of the store. They unpack everything. They flatten the boxes. They put the products in one suitcase. They put the flag boxes in the other suitcase. They go back to China. They deliver the goods to whomever is the distributor in country. And then they turn around and come back to Hong Kong again. So these are, travelers that are going back and forth 2 or 3 times a day. And it's very elaborate. Sometimes the Chinese customs will stop everyone and be very meticulous about what you're bringing. And sometimes they say, no, it's too many. Yes, it is. Other times they're not checking, and the word gets out that, they're not checking. So they flood the stores in Hong Kong. They buy everything and they go back. So when we noticed that they were buying Hylands products, that, it was a sign that we could do it online. And we explored that, and it was good while it lasted.
Yeah, again, That's awesome. Very helpful. I think a lot of people want to understand, you can't build a strategy, perhaps a long-term strategy around that, but it does give you a huge indication as to whether there's demand for your product. You put yourself in brick and mortar, obviously in Hong Kong, and then started to see that growth. Regulatory issues aside, if you have a product that doesn't require some of that regulatory kind of approvals, it's an interesting model. A lot of people are asking on the chat, where does the line begin and end between you and let's say David and the distributor? How much of the role of certification regulations is placed on the distributor to take care of that for you versus you doing it?
In this case, Tycoon had 100% of the responsibility of product registration. And it's a very important point here because, well, I have no experience in registering product in Hong Kong and, less in China. The risk that an American company runs when they do that is that the permits are issued to the name of the distributor, in this case, Tycoon. Because we had developed to that point a good relationship, I took the chance of saying, David, run with it, register the products. They will come out under Tycoon. I trust that, things are going to go well. So it was a gamble. It paid off that we did work together for several years. And to date, David has always said to me, Ben, whenever you want the permits back, let me know, and we'll transfer them back to you. Now, this is the exception. In other markets, you run the risk that if things don't go right, you could be stuck, out in the cold without permits and without a market because your existing distributor and permit / Ministry of Health registration holder will say, you know what, Ben, I'm sorry, you want your permits back. It's going to cost you $250,000 each. Otherwise, come look for us in Hong Kong. And I mean, Hong Kong is extremely modern in terms of their legal system. They speak the language. They follow the British system to some extent. So it made sense. But if you find yourself in this situation I'm not sure, a different market, good luck trying to get them back.
Okay, helpful. I won't put you on the spot for specific numbers for you, but the reality is it's a rare opportunity for us to speak to a brand and an actual distributor at the same time. In your experience, not pertaining to Hylands, either of you could respond to what are normal margins? What is the expectation from a distributor when you're saying, because some distributors in some cases are, as you said, doing the certification, they're doing a lot of the work on that, they're putting the effort in. If they don't ask for money up front, then they want a percentage of sales. What does that look like? What does that general agreement look like?
I'll say a couple of words and then I'll let Dave share in globally what they as a distributor look for, because there's more than one player, right? You have, and it's not a percent of sales. It's just a percent that most of them work with, and throughout the different regions, they range between our distributors that I look for. They range between 18 to 22%. Anything above 22%, maybe 25% could work. But the product can get very expensive very quickly. After the distributor, you have the retailers, and sometimes you may even have a sub-distributor depending on the region. So David, can you share with us more or less what are the type of margins that a company like Tycoon or a local distributor would be looking for to bring an American product in?
Good morning, good evening to everyone. Yes, for the margin, if you're talking about the margin, it depends, because when an American products coming to Hong Kong, if you look at the slide, which is a brand just showing up, there's a brick and mortar store like Manning, Watson's. There's certain margin will go to this brick and mortar store, and then also there's marketing investment, also the logistics coming into Hong Kong, and I believe leaving the margin for a distributor will be around 15 to 20%. And so it's very much depends on the ASP of your products, the in-market price. Yes. So when working with your distributor, I believe one of the it's very clear and transparent that they will present to you a very clear price structure. So everybody, you understand at the end of the day, you know what product price structure will look like, and distributors will always very much you know, keen to co-invest with you and make your product success. Yes, this is my comments there. Yes.
That's
One
great.
thing I'd like to add here quickly, Josh, and in the case of Tycoon, where the margin is not necessarily, like I said, 22 or 25%, and he did mention, David mentioned marketing. In our situation, in the situation for Hylands, I manage marketing outside of the standard margin that the distributor wants. That way, I have the flexibility to invest more or invest less in marketing based on what we're doing as a team. If we have a plan for the whole year, it's seasonal. During winter season, cough and cold, we're going to invest more. During the summer, there's not really a lot going on, so we're not going to invest that much. That way, his margin is always the same, you know, 18%, 15%. And when there's an investment in marketing, we plan it out, we discuss it, and we share that expense. Otherwise, at his 15% during cough and cold season, he's going to be at maybe 11 or 10 because he's using that difference to invest in marketing. So I manage them separately to have that flexibility.
That's very creative, obviously. The question we have, right, is just to clarify, 18%, let's say, above wholesale or 18% off of the retail price. What is the actual, what are we talking here?
Well, so let me go back a little bit. US pricing to say Walmart, Rite Aid, CVS, Walgreens is X. Pricing for an international distributor is X minus 20%, 30%, 40%, because selling product to an international company is a lot cheaper than selling product to Target and Rite Aid. We have fees, slotting allowances, returns. You know, there's a ton of fees that come with American companies and marketing, US marketing for US consumers. Whereas international marketing is a small part, and there's really not a lot of steps. They come in, they pick up the truckload out of your warehouse, or you ship, and that's the end of it. They pay and you're done. The cost structure is very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
But tell me, I got lost on the thought process. The question that you had was on the cost.
Yeah, that's kind of what you said. I mean, basically the cost structure, you've got your wholesale price, you're offering the distributor, and then talk about the layers of pricing. This is the last question, and we're going to move on after that. But again,
sorry, I don't want to drag this on. So my cost structure is David and company, which is, you know, X%, and then the retailer in country. So we try to keep it to a minimum of players. So it's only 3. And in some markets, now my last point, which is, it's critical here because we just had it happen in the US. When you discount your product to a foreign buyer, that the discount is so large, this buyer can, and it happened to Hylands, which we found the wrong distributor and we did not do our due diligence the way we should have. The product never left the US and it was diverted into Walmart or into Rite Aid. So you have to ensure that if your cost structure is such that your distributor doesn't have room to either take it to, say, Ecuador and then bring it back to the US and sell it in the US marketplace, or to tell you he left the marketplace, left the US, he never did, stayed in Miami, and then it sold to Rite Aid. And the discount you're giving them is so large that they can sell to Walmart or to Rite Aid at a lower price than I'm already selling to those stores. Wow. They keep the delta between what they buy and what they sell. So super important point. You got to make sure that the product leaves the US, that the product is shipped, and that the cost structure is such that there's not enough room for them to sell to your existing US customers at a profit.
Okay, that's very helpful. And again, as you can see, Ben is extremely, I find, genuine and open person. He's sharing a lot of great information. He also travels a lot to the countries. He meets a lot with distributors and builds really good relationships because of issues that he's obviously experienced. So try to avoid those through the relationship building. It's more of the amorphous, the strategy. Now, really quickly, and I'll keep you, Ben and David, on for a second just to highlight this point in case I go wrong. When you have products that are regulated, but maybe at a higher price point, let's say, than a Hylands, it may behoove you to sell cross-border, placing inventory either in Hong Kong and then going with a TP, a trade partner, or a Tmall partner, however you want to say it, cross-border on Tmall Global, on Jingdong, Hong Kong, or worldwide. Other solutions also into Southeast Asia. You could also place inventory, keep your inventory in the US, upon purchase, ship it vis-a-vis possibly Hong Kong or direct to consumers, and avoid some of the regulatory issues because it's considered the consumer assumes the risk on an individual basis versus a wholesale importation. So you can avoid some of the labeling issues, some of the certification issues when you're going direct to consumer, but only when it makes sense because the margins have to be high enough to justify that, and your consumer needs to be willing to wait a few days at least for that product. Where have you want to add any color to that?
Yes, just a little bit. It is key. I mean, that is true. You can ship from the US and get it to whatever the place is. However, because we sell medicines, when a mom has a sick child at home, she's not going to go online. Well, she can, but usually they're not going to go to, iHerb and wait 4 days for the product to arrive, because by then your child is either sicker or already healed. So medicine was hard to ship directly from the US because of the timing issue. So it was critical for us to have a local presence with David's group in Shenzhen. They had a warehouse and the product was shipped, overnight, and it got there the next day. So that is key. If you're shipping, I'm not sure, computers, and the consumer's willing to wait, 2 weeks for the right computer, it works. But for medicine, timing is critical. So we had to be as close as possible to the end consumer.
Great. Okay. Obviously, some of the label, the packaging, I don't know if you want to mention anything about that. Just so people see your packaging had to be adjusted.
Yeah, since we were shipping directly from China, we did have to, ensure that the product was, it met the labeling rules and regulations. We were shipping from the US. You ship directly, like you said, Josh, the responsibility is on the consumer, and we would be shipping American product. But we didn't have enough time, or we're not fast enough to ship from the US with the medicine.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, David. We appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.